Good evening. Tonight we are going to begin The House at Pooh Corner by A. Milne, with decorations by Ernest Shepard. Contradiction to begin. An introduction is to introduce people, but Christopher Robin and his friends, who have already been introduced to you, are now going to say goodbye. So this is the opposite. When we asked Pooh what the opposite of an introduction was, he said, "The what of a what?" Which didn't help us as much as we had hoped. But luckily, Owl kept his head and told us that the opposite of an introduction, my dear Pooh, was a contradiction. And as he is very good at long words, I am sure that's what it is. Why we are having a contradiction is because last week, when Christopher Robin said to me, "What about that story you were going to tell me about what happened to Pooh when—" I happened to say very quickly, "What about 9 times 107? And when we had done that one, we had one about cows going through a gate at 2 a minute, and there are 300 in the field, so how many are left after an hour and a half? We find these very exciting. And when we have been excited quite enough, we curl up and go to sleep. And Pooh, sitting wakeful a little longer on his chair by our pillow, thinks grand thoughts to himself about nothing, until he too closes his eyes and nods his head, and follows us on tiptoe into the forest. There, still, we have magic adventures, more wonderful than any I have told you about. But now, when we wake up in the morning, they are gone before we can catch hold of them. How did the last one begin? One day, when Pooh was walking in the forest, there were 107 cows on a gate. Oh, no, you see? We have lost it. It was the best, I think. Well, here are some of the other ones, all that we shall remember now. But of course, it isn't really goodbye, because the forest will always be there, and anybody who is friendly with bears can find it. A. Milne. Chapter 1, in which a house is built at Pooh Corner for Eeyore. One day, when Pooh Bear had nothing else to do, he thought he would do something. So he went round to Piglet's house to see what Piglet was doing. It was still snowing as he stumped over the white forest track, and he expected to find Piglet warming his toes in front of his fire. But his surprise, he saw that the front door was open. And the more he looked inside, the more Piglet wasn't there. "He's out," said Pooh sadly. "That's what it is. He is not in. I shall have to go a fast thinking walk by myself. Bother." But first he thought that he would knock very loudly, just to make quite sure. And while he waited for Piglet not to answer, he jumped up and down to keep warm. And a hum came suddenly into his head, which seemed to him a good hum, such as hummed hopefully to others. The more it snows, tiddly-pum, the more it goes, tiddly-pum, the more it goes, tiddly-pum, on snowing. And nobody knows, tiddly-pum, how cold my toes, tiddly-pum, how cold my toes, tiddly-pum, are growing. "So what I will do," said Pooh, "is I'll do this. I will just go home first and see what the time is. And perhaps I'll put a muffler around my neck, and then I will go and see Eeyore and sing it to him." He hurried back to his own house, and his mind was so busy on the way with the hum that he was getting ready for Eeyore, that when he suddenly saw Piglet sitting in his own best armchair, he could only stand there rubbing his head and wondering whose house he was in. "Hello, Piglet," he said. "I thought you were out." "No," said Piglet, "it's you who are out, Pooh." "Oh, so it was," said Pooh. "I knew one of us was." He looked up at his clock, which had stopped at 5 minutes to 11 some weeks ago. "Nearly 11 o'clock," said Pooh happily. "You are just in time for a little smackerel of something." And he put his head into the cupboard. "And then we will go out, Piglet, and sing my song to Eeyore." "Which song, Pooh?" "The one that we are going to sing to Eeyore," explained Pooh. The clock was still saying 5 minutes to 11 when Pooh and Piglet set out on their way half an hour later. The wind had dropped, and the snow, tired of rushing around in circles trying to catch itself up, now fluttered gently down until it found a place on which to rest. And sometimes that place was Pooh's nose, and sometimes it wasn't. And in a little while, Piglet was wearing a white muffler round his neck and feeling more snowy behind the ears than he had ever felt before. "Pooh," he said at last, and a little timidly, because he did not want Pooh to think that he was giving in, "I was just wondering, how would it be if we went home now and practiced your song, and then sang it to Eeyore tomorrow, or the next day, when we happen to see him?" "That is a very good idea, Piglet," said Pooh. "We will practice it now as we go along. But it's no good going home to practice it, because it is a special outdoor song, which has to be sung in the snow." "Are you sure?" asked Piglet anxiously. "Well, you'll see, Piglet, when you listen, because this is how it begins. 'The more it snows, tiddly-pum.'" "Tiddly what?" said Piglet. "Pum," said Pooh. "I put that in to make it more hummy." "The more it goes, tiddly-pum, the more—" "Didn't you say snows?" "Yes, but that was before." "Before the tiddly-pum?" "It was a different tiddly-pum," said Pooh, feeling rather muddled now. "I'll sing it to you properly, and then you'll see." So he sang it again. "The more it snows, tiddly-pum, the more it goes, tiddly-pum, the more it goes, tiddly-pum, on snowing. And nobody knows, tiddly-pum, how cold my toes, tiddly-pum, how cold my toes, tiddly-pum, are growing." And he sang it like that, which is much the best way of singing it. And when he had finished, he waited for Piglet to say that of all the outdoor hums for snowy weather he had ever heard, this was the best. And after thinking the matter out carefully, Piglet said, "Pooh," he said solemnly, "it isn't the toes so much as the ears." By this time they were getting near Eeyore's gloomy place, which was where he lived, and as it was still very snowy behind Piglet's ears, and he was getting tired of it, they turned into a little pine wood and sat down on the gate which led into it. They were out of the snow now, but it was very cold. And to keep themselves warm, they sang Pooh's song right through 6 times, Piglet doing the tiddly-pums, and Pooh doing the rest of it, and both of them thumping on the top of the gate with pieces of stick at the proper places. And in a little while they felt much warmer and were able to talk again. "I have been thinking," said Pooh, "and what I've been thinking is this. I've been thinking about Eeyore." "What about Eeyore?" "Well, poor Eeyore has nowhere to live." Nor he has, said Piglet. Well, you have a house, Piglet, and I have a house, and they are very good houses. And Christopher Robin has a house, and Owl and Kanga and Rabbit have houses, and even Rabbit's friends and relations have houses or somethings. But poor Eeyore has nothing. So what I've been thinking is, let's build him a house. That, said Piglet, is a grand idea. Where shall we build it? We will build it here, said Pooh, just by this wood, out of the wind, because this is where I thought of it. And we will call this Pooh Corner. And we will build an Eeyore house with sticks at Pooh Corner for Eeyore. There was a heap of sticks on the other side of the wood, said Piglet. I saw them. Lots and lots, all piled up. Thank you, Piglet, said Pooh. What you have just said will be a great help to us. And because of it, I could call this place Pooh and Piglet Corner, if Pooh Corner didn't sound better, which it does, being smaller and more like a corner. Come along. So they got down off the gate, and they went round to the other side of the wood to fetch the sticks. Christopher Robin had spent the morning indoors, going to Africa and back, and he had just got off the boat, and was wondering what it was like outside, when who should come knocking at the door but Eeyore. "Hullo, Eeyore," said Christopher Robin, as he opened the door and came out. "How are you?" "It's snowing still," said Eeyore, gloomily. "So it is." "And freezing." "Oh, is it?" "Yes," said Eeyore. "However," he said, brightening up a little, "we haven't had an earthquake lately." "What's the matter, Eeyore?" "Oh, nothing, Christopher Robin. Nothing important. I suppose you haven't seen a house or what-not anywhere about." "What sort of a house?" "Oh, just a house." "Well, who lives there?" "I do, or at least I thought I did. But I suppose I don't. After all, we can't all have houses." "But, Eeyore, I didn't know. I always thought—" "I don't know how it is, Christopher Robin, but with all this snow and one thing and another, not to mention icicles and such like, it isn't so hot in my field about 3 o'clock in the morning as some people think it is. It isn't close, if you know what I mean. Not so as to be uncomfortable. It isn't stuffy. In fact, Christopher Robin," he went on, in a rather loud whisper, "quite between ourselves, and don't tell anybody, it's cold." "Oh, Eeyore." "And I said to myself, the others will be sorry if I am getting myself all cold. They haven't got brains, any of them, only grey fluff that has blown into their heads by mistake, and they don't think. But if it goes on snowing for another 6 weeks or so, one of them will begin to say to himself, 'Eeyore can't be so very much too hot about 3 o'clock in the morning,' and then it will get about, and they'll be sorry." "Oh, Eeyore," said Christopher Robin, feeling very sorry already. "Oh, I don't mean you, Christopher Robin. You are different. So what it all comes to is that I built myself a house down by my little wood." "Oh, did you really? How exciting!" "Well, the really exciting part," said Eeyore, in a most melancholic voice, "is that when I left it this morning it was there, and when I came back it wasn't. Not at all. Very natural. It was only Eeyore's house. But still, I just wondered." Christopher Robin did not stop to wonder. He was already back in his house. putting on his waterproof hat, his waterproof boots, and his waterproof mackintosh as fast as he could. "We will go look for it at once," he called out to Eeyore. "Sometimes," said Eeyore, "when people have quite finished taking a person's house, there are one or two bits which they don't want, and are rather glad for the person to take back, if you know what I mean. So I thought, if we just went—" "Oh, come on," said Christopher Robin, and off they hurried. And in a very little time they got to the corner of the field by the side of the pine wood, where Eeyore's house wasn't any longer. "There," said Eeyore, "not a stick of it left. Of course, I've still got all this snow to do what I like with. One mustn't complain." But Christopher Robin was not listening to Eeyore. He was listening to something else. "Can you hear it?" he asked. "What is it?" "Somebody laughing." "Listen." And they both listened. And they heard a deep, gruff voice saying in a singing voice that the more it snowed, the more it went on snowing, and a small, high voice tiddly-pumming in between. "It's Pooh," said Christopher Robin excitedly. "Possibly," said Eeyore. "And Piglet," said Christopher Robin excitedly. "Probably," said Eeyore. "But what we want is a trained bloodhound." And then the words of the song changed suddenly. "We have finished our house," sang the gruff voice. "Tiddly-pum," sang the squeaky one. "It's a beautiful house. Tiddly-pum, I wish it were mine. Tiddly-pum, Pooh!" shouted Christopher Robin. And the singers on the gate stopped suddenly. "It's Christopher Robin," said Pooh eagerly. "He's round by the place where we got all those sticks from," said Piglet. "Come on," said Pooh. And they climbed down their gate, and they hurried round the corner of the wood, with Pooh making welcoming noises all the way. "Why, here is Eeyore," said Pooh, when he had finished hugging Christopher Robin. And he nudged Piglet, and Piglet nudged him, and they thought to themselves what a lovely surprise they had got ready. "Hullo, Eeyore." "Same to you, Pooh Bear, and twice on Thursdays," said Eeyore gloomily. Before Pooh could say, "Why Thursdays?" Christopher Robin began to explain the sad story of Eeyore's lost house. And Pooh and Piglet listened, and their eyes seemed to get bigger and bigger. "Where did you say it was?" asked Pooh. "Just here," said Eeyore. "Made of sticks?" "Yes." "Oh," said Piglet. "What?" said Eeyore. I just said, 'Oh,'" said Piglet, nervously. And so as to seem quite at ease, he hummed tiddly-pum once or twice in a "what shall we do now" kind of way. "You are sure it was a house?" said Pooh. "I mean, you are sure the house was just here?" "Of course I am," said Eeyore, and he murmured to himself, "No brain at all, some of them." "Why, what's the matter, Pooh?" asked Christopher Robin. "Well," said Pooh. "The fact is," said Pooh. "Well, the fact is," said Pooh. "You see," said Pooh. "It's like this," said Pooh. And then something seemed to tell him that he was not explaining very well, and he nudged Piglet again. "It's like this," said Piglet quickly, "only warmer," he added after deep thought. "What's warmer?" "The other side of the wood, where Eeyore's house is." "My house?" said Eeyore. "My house was here." "Oh, no," said Piglet firmly, "the other side of the wood." "Because of being warmer," said Pooh. "But I ought to know." "Oh, come and look," said Piglet, simply, and he led the way. "There wouldn't be two houses," said Pooh, "not so close together." They came round the corner, and there was Eeyore's house, looking as comfy as anything. "And there you are," said Piglet. "Inside as well as outside," said Pooh proudly. And Eeyore went inside, and came out again. "It's a remarkable thing," he said. "It is my house. and I built it where I said I did. So the wind must have blown it here. And the wind blew it right over the wood, and blew it down here. And here it is as good as ever. In fact, better in places. Much better, said Pooh and Piglet together. Just shows what can be done by taking a little trouble, said Eeyore. Do you see, Pooh? Do you see, Piglet? Brains first and then hard work. Look at it. That's the way to build a house, said Eeyore proudly. So they left him in it. And Christopher Robin went back to lunch with his friends, Pooh and Piglet, and on the way they told him of the awful mistake they had made. And when he had finished laughing, they all sang the outdoor song for snowy weather the rest of the way home. Piglet, who was still not quite sure of his voice, putting in the tiddly-palms again. And I know that it seems easy, said Piglet to himself, but it isn't everyone who could do it. And thus ends Chapter 1 of the House at Pooh Corner.